really excited today. I have Mayor Cooper and Serena Moy here for the Learn the Framework webinar with Agility Search. Thanks so much for joining. We are going to be sending out this recording after the session, so you will have it handy, and there'll be an easy way to us afterward as well if you have questions or follow-ups that aren't answered during the session in the chat. We're really looking forward to engaging with everyone. Thanks so much for being here. And I'll turn it over to you, Serena.
All right. Thank you, Hadley. Wonderful having you all join us this morning. Welcome. Thank you for giving us your time. And we're really excited to chat with you and just share some insights in the work that we do on a daily basis. My name is Serena Moy. I am an associate partner here at Agility. I've been with Agility I'm coming up on 10 years this summer. So been doing this work of placing leaders with great organizations for many, many years now. Just a little bit more about myself. I actually started my career in human resources. I was a generalist, was in the private sector for many years, and then made a pivot to working with an educational organization called the KIP Foundation. Fell in love with my work there, working in nonprofit education, and pretty much have stayed in the nonprofit education space ever since. So just love the work of placing great leaders with mission driven organizations, and really excited to share some of the things that I've learned over the years and also some of our practices here at Agility. So I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Mara.
Everyone, welcome. Happy Friday. My name is Mara Cooper. I am based in Philadelphia. I joined Agility almost 4 years ago now in August of 2022. Before that, I spent 20 years with a large charter organization in Philadelphia called Mastery Charter Schools. I started as a high school humanities and English teacher, then was a post-secondary advisor, and then helped to support the college and career teams with hiring and onboarding and talent development, and then joined Mastery's talent team in 2017, building out their outreach and marketing functions. I joined Agility in 2022 with the hope that I would continue to do mission driven work, and really have had an opportunity to impact organizations all across the country, K-12s, charter organizations, community-based organizations, national nonprofits, and helping them find really great leaders to help meet their goals and impact the communities that they serve. So thank you so much for being here today with us.
Again, I want us to just take a moment to think about your hiring processes, the ones that you've been involved with, and just think for a moment, like what made those processes challenging? What made them successful? In a little bit, we're going to give you an opportunity to do a sort of take a reflection moment and jot some of those things down. But something that we do here at Agility is when we start a process, we always like to take a step back before we jump in and really think about the purpose before the process. We'd like to approach our searches by stepping back, thinking about what does it take to get us that right hire for the organization. So before we make a hire, we do a deep dive into the actual process. So here are some common pitfalls that I just want to share. I'm not going to read through all the bullets, but just things that we've come across, I've come across over the years. Common pitfalls include rushing to fill the role. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to hiring managers, and when I ask them, okay, so, what are you looking for? How soon are you looking to hire? And they always say, oh, I needed to hire this person 4 months ago. So there's already this sense of urgency and anxiety with hiring managers or teams to fill the role quickly. And so we often will consult our clients and just tell them, like, let's pause for a minute. Let's think through this process. Another common pitfall is vague or inflated role definitions. So being really crystal clear in your job descriptions. A lot of times it's tempting to just list every single thing that you want and need, your ideal candidate profile, and all the qualifications and responsibilities. We like to advise that the job description is a marketing document. So you don't need to list every single thing that the person will be doing. You want to highlight the high level things, the priorities. A common thing that we also will recommend is there's a section in the job description you can list first year priorities. And that's really helpful. Candidates really like that because it's clear to them, like, what's expected of me in my first year in this role. And then the last thing I'll just mention here for common pitfalls is the over reliance on resumes and gut instinct. A lot of times we will, we'll hear folks talk about like, oh, there's something about this person. I just can't put my finger on it. So we don't want to rely so much on those gut feelings. And then the resumes are important. They're an introductory document to a candidate, but you don't want to just rely on what's in the resume. So later on, Mara will talk more specifically about like different steps that we take. And that's why it's important for us to have different ways that we can interact with candidates and that you can also interact with candidates, kind of see them in different venues, in different interactions. Some things that makes searches successful, again, clarity on what your expectations are. I'm talking a lot about process and structure. We have timelines that we will build out with our hiring teams. So we know what milestones we want to hit at what point. We do have internal deadlines or guidelines that we like to use for searches. You don't want them to go on for too long. And we want to make sure that we have alignment across stakeholders. Something that I've often seen is when you have folks who enter the interview process at different points, you may have misalignment across your organization. And so I think it's really important for you, whoever's involved in the interview process at whatever stage, that there is complete alignment about what you're looking for. And then that actually leads into like competency, evidence-based assessments. Again, we'll talk a little bit later. Mara will talk more about the competency scorecards that we use. And we use that to ground ourselves in, again, the competencies that we are matching our candidates and the expectations of what we need from them. So making sure that as they're moving through a process, you're using a lot of evidence-based assessments. All right. So for today, the goals of the session, by the end of this session, we hope that you will see hiring as a system, not just a transaction. Again, we're going to share a little bit about our framework here at Edgility, Find, Hiring, and Keeping framework. And we hope that you'll be able to walk away with practice tools for equitable, objective decision making and a clear roadmap that you can use immediately. All right. So with the first part of our framework, which is finding talent, building a high potential talent pool. I talked a little bit about stepping back when you first start a process with our clients. So when we initiate a search, we always do what we call a discovery process. And that's sitting down with a team or hiring manager and figuring out who are the folks that we need to talk to really understand what's going on in the organization. We'll talk to stakeholders in the organization. It could be a list of folks who will be working very closely with this person. We'll definitely want to talk to their hiring manager. We'll want to talk to folks that maybe they will be supervising. If it's a role where they'll have a team and they'll be walking into a team, we'll want to get insights from that team. So our discovery is really what I call a deep dive. We speak to these individuals within the organization. We'll do one-on-one conversations. If it's a larger team, we'll put together focus groups just to gather feedback. And if it's a really large team and we can't possibly talk to everybody, sometimes we'll use surveys. So in these discovery conversations and surveys, we ask the same thing to everybody. Usually there's a question around like, tell us a little bit about what makes your organization stand out. What are the current challenges that this organization is facing right now? And there's always a section in the conversation or the survey where it asks each individual who's participating in this process, what would you be looking for in this next candidate, this next leader, just so that we get a sense from folks like what would they ideally be looking for. And so it's really important that we align our job description to these, our reflections and the feedback we've gathered, that we look at. It also affects the competencies that we will build for the search process. And we also ask about describe success at 6, 12, and 24 months for this person. It's really about role clarity, building a great talent pool. You'll use it throughout your assessments, throughout your selection process, and then, of course, transition into your organization. All right. So I promised you that you would have a chance to spend some time on reflection. So this is a problem of practice. We'd like to, we'll give you about 3 minutes, and then we just want you to stop for a moment and identify a search that you conducted in the last year that did not have the outcome that you had hoped for. Either you could not find the leader, you did not find the right leader, or it took longer than expected. How can a clear discovery process have impacted this outcome? What stakeholders could you have talked to? What questions could you have asked of those stakeholders? How could the search have been clear? So we'll give you a few minutes to just think about that and jot that down. Okay.
If people want to share some quick reflections or responses in the chat, this would be a great time to do that.
Hadley, are you able to see what some reflections are?
Looks like a few people are typing.
During discovery, I could have gotten more information on what the leader was expected to do in their first year, helping a search committee or board understand the perceived glows and grows from different stakeholders that they could better prepare a candidate. I really want to emphasize how important it is to take the time before you start any kind of a process to just really map it out, think through whatever that discovery process is for your team. It doesn't have to be as extensive as the one that I described, because you may have a much smaller team, but just making sure that you're identifying the key competencies for a particular role from the start. And that will really help you build a strong pipeline of candidates. Also, when you do that, it will help you to build buy-in to your process, whoever's involved with other members of your team. And it may often surface referrals of candidates. So that's a bonus. All right. I'm going to hand it off to Mira.
Thanks, Serena. So the second part of our process is hire. And I think this is a lot of times, especially when you're working with search committees who are not doing this sort of work on a daily basis, like probably all of us are. This is the part of the process that they mostly focus on. Get me candidates. How can we hire people? This is the part in our process where we really have to work with our search committees to help them understand why it's important to continue to reflect on our competencies and to start to shed some of their previous kind of reliance on things like gut instinct or things that they might see in their resume that maybe is not as relevant to the position, but looks good on paper, and why our process is so important to really surface all of the ways in which a candidate has demonstrated or can demonstrate that they're the right fit for this job. So when we're working with search committees, we want to help them to mitigate their biases by really building out competencies for a position. So this discovery process that Serena was talking about, really talking to people, getting an understanding of the organization, getting an understanding of the hopes and dreams of this organization for this next leader, helps us to build out a job description and also a set of competencies. What are the things that we want a candidate to come to this role with, having done and demonstrated in their previous roles, that would help us understand whether or not they're going to be successful? So we really at Edgility base our process on those competencies and collecting evidence on those competencies at each stage of the process. One of the things, we will use our competencies to create a scorecard and then collect evidence for that scorecard all throughout, starting with the application, looking at folks' resume, not just looking at the titles of their roles, but really digging into what's on the resume that helps us understand what they've done. We'll ask a couple of application questions. We know in this day and age, we want to make it as easy as possible for applicants, while also trying to assess whether or not they are meeting at least the first bar for the role. We'll ask folks to do a one-way video interview, where we're asking them to answer questions that are aligned to the competencies and not what they will do, but evidence of what they have done. And then we use all of that to build out a phone interview that will help us to ask follow-up questions and really dive into their experience. All of these stages are what we use to help our search committees look at candidates objectively and consistently. So we structure questions that are competency aligned. We probe for depth of knowledge, not hypotheticals. So we're not asking people what they will do. We're asking them what they have done. And we have a fairly structured process. That is oftentimes really hard for search committees. As Serena said, people want to get someone in the seat immediately. And so asking them to slow down so that we can continue with a process that has really been proven for us. We have, I think it's over 80% of our folks that are hired are in their seat for over 2 years. And that's because we really put a lot of time and effort into finding the right person for the role, which is oftentimes a little bit hard for a search committee, especially those that aren't doing this work on a daily basis. Our competencies are not just high level. So they aren't just a people leadership. It isn't just organizational leadership. We really try to get specific. And that might mean in people leadership, we want someone who has developed a team during a time of transition. We may want someone who has the ability to have difficult conversations. And therefore, those are the kinds of questions that we're going to ask at every stage. For example, we might say, tell me about a time that you led an organization through a significant change. We're going to ask them for data. We want specifics. We don't want them to tell us what they would do in that situation. We want them to tell us exactly what they have done in that situation. And we do that for every step of the process. We ask follow-up questions. And while this also having competencies gives us an opportunity to ask personalized questions as well, while still making sure that every candidate is being evaluated on the competencies for the role. So we're going to show you now what our candidate scorecard looks like, so that you get a sense of what it is that we're collecting through all of these different processes. You can see a sampling of some of the competencies that are on the scorecard. So mission and vision alignment, equity leadership, people leadership, these might be just some of the competencies that might be included. And what you're seeing there are, rather than words that indicate what they will do, which is what you might see on a job description, you're seeing words that help us identify what somebody has done. And then we're collecting evidence under experience. So just high level, what does their experience tell us about their ability to drive the mission of an organization? Where have they been successful? So generally, this is where we will put in data. And then where might we see some gaps? We know that no candidate is perfect, that there may be gap areas. And this is really where we're going to drill in a little bit more, especially during the phone interview and the and semifinalist round and the finalist round with the search committee. We do share our scorecards with the search committee. They can get very, very lengthy. We start our scorecard with a section that we can provide a summary of all that we've learned. We'll provide an average rating so you can see that we will rate each of these competencies of 4, 3, 2, or 1. 4 being someone could walk in and just be an expert in that area. 3 is that they have evidence that they've been successful in that area. 2 is that they may have some experience, but might need some support, maybe from the board or from, if it's not a CEO level roles, whoever their direct manager is. And a 1 generally indicates that someone has not had experience in that area. So we'll provide an average rating. We will provide a recommended next step. And we also provide some high level glows and grows. For some search committees, especially for boards, they have a lot going on, right? They have day jobs and we can't expect that they're going to read a 15-page document. Some will, which is great. Some will not. So we want to make it easy for them. So we'll provide them with a high level, with that kind of high level overview, so that they can really make some great decisions about who they want to move on to the next stage of the process, semifinalists and then finalist round. And we're using the resume answers from application questions, the video interview that they submit, as well as our phone interview to populate this document. And we can go on to the next slide. Great. So all of this, as I mentioned, is an opportunity for search committees. And a lot of times what search committees will say is, boy, I'd never really done, I'd really never done a hiring process this way. And here's what I'm going to take from that process. It's all really designed to help decision makers move from opinions to evidence, move from that gut feeling to solid evidence as to why they are moving somebody through a process and ultimately making a hire. At the end of each committee interview, so semifinalist interview and finalist interview, we will ask them to complete surveys independently. It's something that we really drill down on. We ask them, please don't talk to each other about candidates until you've completed your survey. We then collect all of that survey feedback and put that into a debrief deck that we then share back to the committee so that they can make objective decisions about candidates. There are both qualitative and quantitative feedback on our debrief decks, and all of that again is competency aligned. We also guide them through those debrief conversations, always drawing them back to competencies when we hear them start to stray into conversations about, oh, I just don't know if that person is going to be a good fit for this team. Oh, it seems like this one candidate, we went to the same college. I know that that means that they've had really great training. We always bring those conversations back, and having a debrief deck with lots of evidence on it really makes that a lot easier for us. The other thing is this process is not just designed to help our hiring committees and our search committees and our boards. It's also designed to help finalists really understand the role, the kinds of questions that we're asking, the way in which we are presenting competencies. All of that really helps our candidates understand what's going to be expected of them. Obviously, they have a job description, but once they start to hear the kinds of questions that are being asked, they can really get a sense of what this role really is, so that they can make a decision about whether or not this is a good fit for them. The last thing that we want is someone to get into a role and then all of a sudden feel like, oh, this actually isn't the role that I thought it was going to be. So we want to make sure that we're aligning this process to what's going to be expected so that candidates can evaluate whether or not this is the right role for them as well. That is why we really like to focus on questions that are competency aligned, also really clear communication for our candidates. All throughout the process, they're receiving updates, especially when they're not going to move on anymore. We provide feedback and offer feedback so that they understand why it is they're not moving forward. Folks spend a lot of time in this process, and we want to make sure that we are helping them understand why it is that they may not move forward. And then also involving our candidates in the reference check process as well. Again, trying to mitigate bias from the search committee by having candidates be really, really clear about who it is we're going to be talking to once it's time to start gathering references.
Now you've found your great leader, and you want to ensure that one, they have a really smooth transition in the beginning of joining your organization. So you want to launch them successfully, but you also want to provide some ways to ensure that there's long-term success and that they're in the seat for a long time. So again, I want to just reiterate the point that Mara had brought up earlier. Over 80% of our placements do stay in their positions for over 2 years. So we know this framework that we're talking about, if it's implemented well, that it's successful in keeping people in organizations. So as I want to reiterate, a smooth onboarding plan ensures seamless integration to your organization. Focus on the mission of your organization, long-term success, and then cultural alignment with other members of your team. And if there's a board involved, then also cultural alignment with your board. So we've actually worked with many organizations to sort of build out a thoughtful onboarding experience for place candidates. I want to share some specific tools that we've put together for our teams. And so again, something that you all can either take away with you or implement if you haven't already have something in place. A roadmap from day one is the first thing I would definitely highlight. So a roadmap of who will they meet with? Who will they spend time with? And it's kind of very similar to like a discovery process that I spoke about earlier. Map out a plan, who you want this new hire to meet with. So it could be one-on-one conversations with the key people that they're going to be working with on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, you're going to want that person to be spending a lot of one-on-one time with their supervisor. If this is a leader, and they're reporting to a board, then of course you're going to want them to spend time with the board. And in situations where it is a board reporting role, it's not just the board chair, but you want this person to be spending time with each and every board member. So that can mean, and you can do it in many different ways, right? It could be over coffee. It could be over a meal. But the main thing, no matter what way you map it out, the main thing is for this person to be spending a significant amount of time one-on-one, building those relationships with one another. Also, it builds trust. So oftentimes we work with organizations where there's a transitioning leader and there was a beloved leader. So a new person coming in, there's all kinds of anxiety. There's all kinds of questions about who's this new person. So it really allows the new person to come in and build those relationships and ease some of those anxieties and build trust. The other thing I want to mention is as you're building that plan, in addition to the one-on-one meetings, definitely building out a clear, evaluation map. So generally high performing leaders, they want feedback. They want to know how they can grow. So we recommend, again, as you're mapping out their onboarding plan and who they're meeting with, also mapping out feedback loops. When, how often will they be meeting with their managers to get feedback, especially as folks are transitioning and there's a huge learning curve, right? You learn, new folks are going to need to learn about the culture of the organization. There's going to be all kinds of questions. So making sure that those feedback loops are integrated into that 30, 60, 90-day plan, 6-month plan, 1-year plan. So having clear goals from the get-go, KPIs, key performance indicators, again, regular feedback loops will help a new hire to track the kind of impact that they're making within the organization. It's great for the new staff member. It's also great for your organization as you're evaluating this new person. Leaders are also more likely to stay if it's a clear transition plan and it's clear what's expected of them. This is also, again, I want to reemphasize if this is a role that reports to a board, it's a great way for them to start with their board. So clear alignment, structure fosters meaningful connection and a shared purpose between the new leader, board members, and key stakeholders. To summarize, Mara and I presented just a snapshot of our agility process roadmap to find great talent, to hire using evidence and data, not just gut instinct, and to keeping great talent from day one, just to ensure long-term success for your new employee and then for the organization. So as it says on the slide here, this isn't just a checklist, it's a system for greater mission realization. And all the things that Mara and I talked about today, you can find a lot of this information that we just shared with you on our website. We update our website regularly. So there's tools, there's resources, there's blogs, a lot more information on our website you can find, and again, resources you can take. So I would recommend that you check it out and go back to our website regularly because we do update it.
So if you have any questions, this would be a great time if you want to put them in the chat. You're welcome to do that. But like we've said before, and Mara reiterated, you can definitely follow up. We will be sharing the recording and contact information as well. But I will go on to a couple of additional slides that might help prompts. Feel free to put anything in the chat. This is a self-reflection before we wrap up. What is one thing that you are going to do differently in your next search? Or what's a tool you want to implement right away? Mara showed that scorecard, for example. Maybe you want to make a competency scorecard. What's a question you want to ask your team next? So just making a quick commitment to yourself. It's always helpful when you get a bunch of new resources and tools and ideas to just think about one thing you can make concrete for yourself. And as a next step on our end, we will be sharing this recording as well as contact information. So we are here as a resource for you. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you to Mara and Serena for leading us today. And we're really excited to continue the engagement with all of you. Have a great afternoon, everyone.